Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Expert. And today I am being joined by two fantastic, smart women. And they're both lawyers and they both have a passion not only for the law, but for politics. And we are going to be speaking about the Supreme Court and the unfortunate death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who has been such an effect on all of us. But before we get going, let's roll our intro.
Got on my leather jacket thriller. The show ain't nothing Miller. Man, I'm a lady killer. If I want her, I'ma steal her. I promise I can make her fly away like caterpillars. So if you don't know by now, then you should probably get familiar.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Leticia Remauro, and today I am joined by two fantastic guests who I happen to know in my personal life as well as in my professional life. We are joined by Cara Buonincontri. How are you, Cara?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And we are joined by Annette Guarino. How are you, Judge?
I'm just great, Leticia.
Wonderful. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you a little bit about Cara. Cara is an attorney in private practice here on Staten Island. She has a concentration in elder law, and she has served on the Steedman Society for Children for 12 years, and she's been very involved in our Staten Island community. Now, Judge Guarino, Annette Guarino, is a retired family court judge from Westchester County, and she is also a former colleague of mine from Battery Park City. As you know, Annette is a returning guest, and when we were in Battery Park City together, Annette actually helped hundreds of people get out of the building in One World Financial Center during the 9/11 attack. So it's good to have you back, Judge Guarino, and it's fabulous to be joined by you, Cara, on this very special Ask the Expert, where we are going to pay some respect to Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and also talk about how her death leaves a vacancy in the Supreme Court, and what are the President and the Senate going to do about it. So, ladies, I'd love to start, and Cara, I'd like to start with you. Can you just talk to me a little bit about why you became a lawyer and how Justice Ginsburg's life affected you in your life, or impacted you in your life?
When I was very young, I watched the film To Kill a Mockingbird, and I was very impressed with Atticus Finch and his defense of, that black man at the time. And it really hit me that there's a lot of injustice in this world, and I wanted to do something when I grew older to change that. So that prompted me to want to become an attorney. And as far as this justice, I mean, she was an incredible woman, very passionate. I latched on to that passion. I believe that, anyone should be revered as long as they're so passionate about their position, whether you agree with it or not. She chose the right profession for her, and I really admired her.
And she was an amazing woman. She really, when they decided to call her the notorious RBG, I thought that was a fantastic nickname for her, and that she connected with so many young people. I think it's a testament to how she lived her life. Before we get to you, Annette, I want to just say hello to Michelle Eskenazi. She is another strong woman in law enforcement. She is the head of the Bail Bonds Society, Bail Bondsman Association in New York State, and also on the National Board of the Bail Bonds. So, hi, it's great to see you, Michelle Eskenazi, and for everyone else, please like and share and bring other people into the program, especially other young women, because what these two very, very strong women have to offer is going to be great for everyone to hear, not only women, but men too. So, Judge Guarino, why don't you tell us, how did you get involved in law, and how did the notorious RBG affect you?
Oh, I think I'm generationally a little bit ahead of Cara in terms of the law. When I was young, women talked about being teachers and nurses, and those were acceptable professions. And then, while I was at Catholic Girls Prep School in Queens, something called the Watergate hearings happened. And I spent the summer between high school and college absolutely glued to the television, watching what happened, and learned so much about the law, and always had that innate sense of wanting to do that. Even so, I went to college, city kid to Baruch, and was studying public admin. Came home one weekend and said to my parents, I think I want to be a lawyer. And after they got up off the floor, to their credit, because that wasn't a profession that Italian American women went into, they were most supportive and great help. And also, I had great professors at Baruch who shepherded me in the direction of law school, figuring out I was not going to have the talent or the inclination to be an accountant or a CPA. Justice Ginsburg is really the second or third wave of women in the United States who have so changed our lives. Think about the suffragettes, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, who really didn't get to see the vote come to fruition for women. And then you have those developments. Obviously, the amendment is 100 years old this year, so it's significant. Then came the quiet era after World War II, when women resumed their roles as wives, as mothers. And finally, you had incredible icons in the law like RBG, who joined the ACLU, who broke those barriers, who made it possible for women to have their own credit cards, to have seats in law schools and medical schools, to move in to the professions. So she is to be honored and revered for all of her accomplishments as the pioneering lawyer that she was. My generation followed hers, where a good 33 and a third to 40% of women became lawyers in the 80s. And then there's the third wave of women who I sometimes have problems with because they don't recognize how much we gave them. It's so easy for them. They move through. No one ever says, no, you can't be a lawyer. They don't call you honey when you go to a courthouse. So the after effects and the consequences of what someone like Ruth Bader Ginsburg did for her gender resonate for decades after she moved on to the bench.
So Pam Sylvester, and she's asking, where did you ladies go to high school? So that's a good question. Pam, I went to Coconut Creek High School in Florida, and I unfortunately dropped out in the 9th grade. I decided that I was too smart for school, and I wanted to get my GED, and I could kick myself for it. I later went to college on Staten Island. But Cara, where'd you go to high school?
I went to Fontbonne Hall in Brooklyn, an all-girls private Catholic school.
How about you, Annette?
Mary Louis Academy in Jamaica in Queens, the product of the Josephites of Brentwood, Long Island.
It's the Mary Louis Academy.
Indeed it is. In 1974, when I graduated, 241 of the girls went to either 2 or 4 year college out of 243 grads.
Wow. That's remarkable. That's fantastic.
It's still going strong. It's a wonderful school.
My mother, Josephina Stassi, joined us, and she sometimes acts as my producer, and she's saying that I'm too low. So, Mom, I hope that this sounds better now. Okay, so let's talk about the fact that I think that what you touched on, Annette, was that the young women today, because of Justice Ginsburg, cutting a swath because of Katie Stanton and Mississippi Anthony paving the road. Many young women don't realize that how bad it was, even just 50 years ago. And, this is where I get caught up because that's what we fought for, right? I mean, whether you consider yourself a feminist or a feminist, or if you consider yourself just a woman who's, not going to let anything stand in the way. What we all try to do is to make it easier for others to come up, other people to be qualified to have the job, whether they're male or female, black, white, red, Chinese, it doesn't matter, whatever religion, to be able to apply or apply the degree that they want without any barriers in it. But once we get there, looking back, you don't realize or maybe not appreciate the fights that we all had. But isn't that what we want? Isn't that what we're trying to get to? We're trying to get to, we should never forget, but we don't want anybody thinking in the terms of this is a woman, this is an African American, this is a Jew, this is, a Muslim. So we want the playing field level, don't we?
Well, we do want it level, but we do want, in all fairness, you need, different portions of the country represented, and you want men, women, and people of different colors. So I think you do have to be aware of that when you're making your choices.
So how do we keep the history alive? How do we talk about the hurdles in the past, but not focus on them going forward? And how do we do that, Judge Guarino?
I think one of the things I did was help everyone understand that the great grace and mercies I was given by the women who came before me gave me an obligation to pass it on. So if there was a young lawyer who came in, a new member of the panel who was African American, it didn't matter. They could be Asian, African American, female, male, didn't matter, blind, handicapped. You're new to the panel. Let's start you learning. If you wish to be mentored, I will do that. So the first assignments I would give them were simple things, service of process, find somebody and get them served so a parent could get a custody case moving. Second thing would be to assign them after they qualified to represent a child on an easy case, perhaps a guardianship case where a parent had died and a relative was stepping up and it was a natural person to take care of the child. So little by little, I would, if they understood, I would move them along and teach them. It was mentoring from the bench. And then when the tough cases came up, you called up on, you had a veteran, there were a couple of Marines on my panel, they would make sure that that veteran had the right connections to where they needed to be. So it's paying it forward and thanks for what you were given. You never forget. You maintain your humility.
So Kim Salvo has joined us and she says, really smart women became teachers. Now really smart women study other professions. Other women become teachers, which is a problem for our youth. Bravo to you ladies for your success.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Eskenazi wants me to talk about my future as the borough president of Staten. I thank you, Michelle. I will save that for another show. But here's the one thing that's for sure. The women that I'm speaking with today have shown me so much and have taught me so much that I know that I will have an easy time of my campaign going forward and once I'm in Borough Hall because I have their resources and their friendships. So, but thank you. So Cara, can you tell me what would you think, or what was one of your favorite decisions of the notorious RBG? And where, we know she made policy from the bench, and it's so right. It's what people say she should, but we know that that's what the Supreme Court does often. So, yeah, tell us one of your favorites.
Well, I love the fact that she was just as well known for her dissents. I mean, she was a brilliant writer. I mean, that's not very common. And in the law, they don't want you to be colorful usually or pedantic. You know, there's a way of writing. She was passionate. So she was one of a kind as far as her ability to write. One of my favorite cases was Moritz versus the commission, and it was because it was on behalf of a man. And this is because the reason I'm bringing this up is because most people see her in, you know, gender equality cases where it's usually a woman who's the plaintiff. And she chose her plaintiffs wisely. And in this case, she chose someone wisely. It was a man because he had been taking care of his wife, and he was not allowed a deduction for taking care of her because they felt that it was gender related, that women were only caretakers. So she took on this case, and she filed. I mean, I think that was, for me, that was one of the, I mean, so many brilliant cases, but for me, this hit home that she was going outside the usual and representing, you know, a man in this case.
Wow, that I didn't even know that case existed, and I'm sure that I don't think that people generally think about the Supreme Court in their everyday life until, you know, we hear of these landmark cases. But there are so many cases every day, right, Judge Guarino? I mean, the Supreme Court they don't just get together every once in a while. They hear cases on the regular.
They convene the first Monday in October, and that dates back to England. Dates all the way back to the time of St. Thomas More, which is why there's a red mass on the first Monday in October when England was still Catholic. And they issue all of just their decisions, and they're done by the end of June. So their term is from beginning of October until end of June, and they hear their arguments. Unlike what many people believe, they only hear approximately 70 cases a year. So they are turning away most of the work and sending it back to where it belongs in the lower courts. And what they choose to hear is usually of significance that will affect the country as a whole. What people also don't understand, and hopefully I can help educate a bit, is that most of the decisions that come out of the court are 9-0 or 8-1 or 7-2 because there are 9 justices. There is a collegiality at the court. There's great traditions where the judges get along with each other. The famous, wonderful relationship with Justice Scalia and Justice Ginsburg, where they both loved the opera. Their spouses enjoyed each other. They spent every New Year's Eve together. There's a story about Justice Scalia that his son tells of him buying 24 roses for his colleague Ruth on her birthday. And someone asks him, well, does it change her vote? And his answer was, some things are more important than where a decision ends up, like friendship. So it's a great and wonderful tradition at the court. Justice Ginsburg, to me, she was a liberal of the classic style. Rule of law, Constitution matters. And yes, she did, when the issues were of her own passions, she stretched the law to fit where she wanted it to fit. But in many cases that have been recent, she was the person from New York, so she got the interim injunctions from the lower courts in New York to stop a judge from doing something stupid or nonsensical. And many times she came down not where people expected her to. For example, the president's tax return case. One of the courts of appeal was going to allow that to go forward. And she said, this will cause irreparable harm if it's not heard by the United States Supreme Court. So she did what she's supposed to do. She maintained the status quo, and she kept the injunction in place until it could be argued, heard, and decided by the full court. So to her credit, she was also a jurist who believed in the rule of law, whether or not, in many instances, it matched her personal opinions. So that's a wonderful part of her legacy.
Yes.
I want to remind everybody, please, to like and share, and share the broadcast with people, bring them in. This is on Facebook Live, on Facebook, so you can bring others in. And the more likes we get, hit the little card, hit the little thumbs up button. The more we can keep on bringing to you and expand our audience. Cara, my mom, Joe, Miss Dazzy, said she just saw that movie that you were referring to. My mom is a big movie buff. Cara has great hooks into the entertainment industry, and she knows a lot about movies and music too. All right, so Judge Guarino, you touched on something, the fact that the notorious RBG was someone who respected the law greatly and had some really great relationships. And I think that that's important for everyone to really recognize that she and Scalia their philosophies were probably as different as they could be legally, their legal philosophy or political philosophy, but they shared a great friendship, and it shows how cohesive the body is. But we're out there now in the public with so much contention about her loss, the loss of her life, and the vacancy it creates on the bench right now. And I think, Chuck Schumer, before he even tweeted anything about her loss and what type of woman she was, the first thing he tweeted out was that, we must not fill that vacancy. And, we must wait for a new president, or until after the election. But he did it assuming we're going to get a new president. Now we know that, and then we're seeing that her granddaughter has said this was her dying wish from her deathbed, that we should wait for there to be a new president before we appoint someone. I'm not going to question whether that's true or not. I'm going to say that we know that she had a strong opinion, so possibly, probably, she could have said that. But how do we move forward from this? Because it seems like, in 2016, Mitch McConnell in the Senate, when Obama put up Merrick, McConnell said no, we're not going to move on this. The lame duck term, lots of things, lots of reasons, and I know you'll elucidate on that, Judge Guarino. But now they're talking about the president making an offer of appointment, and the Senate moving forward with the hearing. Can you tell me what do you think about this, and what's different between 2016 and 2020, and who's right in this?
Yes. Well, in prep for speaking with both of you today and trying to get some facts out rather than what we now call narratives, I've learned that that's a euphemism for a particular point of view rather than what we used to expect where journalists did the facts. First off, let me start with some facts. And this one I love because I'm a fan of John Marshall, and one of my great friends is a descendant of John Marshall. John Adams lost an election, and he lost that election in 1800. After he lost the election, he nominated John Marshall, the single most important, significant creator of the judicial branch, if you wish to use that terminology, the superstar. John Marshall was confirmed on a lame duck president after he'd lost the election and before the new president was sworn in. Fact number one. Fact number two, 20 from the Wall Street Journal. In my reading and research this morning, 25 times in American history prior to now, there have been justices nominated in an election year. 21 times votes were taken. Fact number three, New York Times, RBG quote, 7/10/2016. There's nothing in the Constitution that says the president stops being president in his last year. In other words, there's nothing that stops this president from making the nomination, and there's no pejorative. The threats by good old Chuck Schumer, who is no longer my senator since I live in Florida now, that he's going to pack the court and do away with the filibuster, are threats. The mainstream media people were threatening riot and burning down the Congress. Really? Is that where we want to be in our country? We've even had a person who was never a judge placed on the United States Supreme Court by a great majority with nearly a voice vote. Her name is Elena Kagan, and she's a reliable liberal on the court. Never, ever served as a judge. I'm just trying to think of what else in facts you need to know about. Oh, Joe Biden, the Democratic candidate for president, former vice president, while he was a senator, voted for Stephen Breyer when nominated in 1980, which was an election. The allegations, facts, the facts sometimes are difficult when hypocrisy sets in. So those are just a few of the facts. And then the last thing between 2016 and today, the Merrick Garland, who's a wonderful justice who served on the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, brilliant guy. There's a difference. 2016, you know that AOC doesn't really know there are three branches of government. There's judicial, there's legislative, and there's executive. Well, when the executive and the upper house of the legislative, the Senate, are of different parties, that's where the votes don't happen. When the executive, in this instance, is of one party, and the upper house of the legislative, the Senate, are of the same party, that vote can go forward. And last fact, you don't even have to have hearings. There's nothing in the Constitution that says a Judiciary Committee has to have hearings. All it says is they have to vote. So that's just some facts to offset the narratives you're going to hear in the next couple of weeks.
Well, thank you for that. That's important. And so I
gave me 20 minutes to do some research. I did it.
You did great. You did great. So, I mean, in 2016, when the Scalia death caused a vacancy, my party, the Republican Party, Mitch McConnell said we're not going to move to do the hearings, and that Obama should put forth Merrick Garland, any nomination, but he did. My position then is the same as it is now. My position then was the president, by the Constitution, has a obligation to put forth a name, and the Senate, because of their job, has an obligation to, either vote to approve or deny, and whether they wanted to have hearings or not. I thought that Mitch McConnell was wrong at that time for not conducting hearings. I understood what he was trying to say, that it might drag on and opposing parties and whatever. But I thought that it was he was being derelict in his duties by doing that. I feel now the same way as I felt then. I think it's important for the president to nominate, and it's important for the Senate to move forward to do what they do, whether it's going to be to have hearings or vote or however they're going to do it. I think it's also important that Joe Biden tell us who he would appoint, because for me, I think it's important to the people out there to know, what these nominees would look like or who they would be. Now, we can't investigate them all because, especially without the hearings, you don't have the benefit of the background and all that stuff that goes on, like we've seen in the past. But we can do research, and we'll all have people at our fingertips. Cara, I mean, how do you feel about it? Do you feel that they should move forward with the appointment, or do you see any hypocrisy here? What's your point of view?
Well, I think it's the president's right, so I have no issue with that. And from what I'm hearing, his choices, while they're not, toward the liberal side, I think any judge, and the judge can speak to this, should have the ability to really view the case on the merits of the case. That's how I see a judge should be acting. So in my mind, I'm really a moderate, but if I had the right case, I could be swayed to vote, very conservatively, depending on the facts of that case. So I have full confidence that if the person is, a jurist, and they should be able, and I have no problem with picking someone now, and if they're not confirmed, not confirmed, but I have no problem with going forward, and I have faith in the quality of the jurist that is already mentioned.
And so there's the one thing that President Trump has said is that he will fill the vacancy with a qualified woman, and he's given us some of those names. How do you guys feel about that? That he's made the announcement that it will be a woman, and do you think that that's the right way for him to go? I'll let Cara, you go first.
I'm going to say yes, because we do need a balance on the court. So I definitely think that her position should be replaced with a woman, and there are plenty of qualified women out there, and I'd like to see her start there.
Judge Guarino, how about you?
I'm of two minds. I always want to see the best qualified person get the job, not because of what gender they were born. However, in working in the courthouse with kids, it was eminently apparent to me that if you come into a court and the judge looks like you, or the judge sounds like you, or the judge is African American, or the judge is Asian, or the judge is someone that you can relate to on a level other than just the person standing up there in the robe, then it makes a difference. It makes a difference in lower courts. It certainly makes a difference in the highest courts, because experience and background and training and service and litigation, it prepares you for a fuller view. However, as a woman, you bring a different point of view, and it's not to be discounted. Obviously, it was Ronald Reagan who appointed Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman ever to serve on the United States Supreme Court, and President Clinton appointed the second woman, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So it's significant. I wouldn't call it a woman's seat. I think that we are 44 days away from an election. There's an awful lot of politics going down, and that most importantly is what's driving the fact that there's going to be a woman nominated. One of the things that I left out earlier is that the president did say, out of respect for the Ginsburg family, he'd not make the nomination until after her private burial at Arlington this Thursday, which is appropriate, to wait and to honor her family and not rush into things. But I also think that the senators shouldn't be saying whether they're going to vote or not vote before we get there. I appreciated that President, then candidate Trump, put out his list of people he would put on the bench. I don't believe that candidate Clinton did that. Hillary Clinton did that. I think she did as well.
She did. She put out a list as well.
Okay, so then it gave people a broader view of who they were thinking about and who they should vote for when they were making their vote for president. Not having that this time is significant. Not knowing who a President Biden might nominate is significant. I think the research shows that President Trump got, 86 or 88% of the evangelicals who voted, and their most important vote was with respect to the people he had listed as potential Supreme Court nominees. You're entitled as a voter to have some information about who you're voting for.
So for those of you who see me turning off microphones here and there, the only reason I'm doing it is we're getting sometimes a little feedback from Cara's speaker. So it's not that I'm silencing everybody. I'm just.
I know they're doing work outside.
I'm just trying to moderate and make sure that you have a pleasant experience as a viewer. We're joined by Tony Herbert, and Tony Herbert is a candidate for public advocate in New York City for 2021. And Tony says it should be any candidate that is qualified, but certainly a woman can bring a great dynamic to the bench. And I think that we all agree. I think we all agree with you, Tony. I think that here's the thing that I find uplifting is that in the year 2020 there are so many qualified candidates from both genders, from all different ethnicities, with good experience that can bring something great to the bench. And I think that I personally think that it is the right thing to do is to that if there is a qualified candidate who is a woman, and we've seen that there are many, then that person should be nominated to the seat because, again, it's a nine-person seat right now, and with Ruth there were 3 females sitting on the bench, and so I agree with you, Judge. The more the Supreme Court could look like the constituency, I think the better we'll all feel about the decisions that come out of the Supreme Court. And the one thing though that I want to always feel confident in is that those justices are making decisions based in the law and not based in politics. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she had an amazing ability to balance that. She really did. And I don't know, and Antonin Scalia did as well. I don't know that we'll ever see that level of ability again. I hope we do. But as the world is changing and becoming more political, it really concerns me about whether we can keep that outside noise out of the ears of our justices and continue to focus on the law. And the one thing that Chuck Schumer said and some others was that if they take back the Senate, everything's on the table. So, and one of the things that they're talking about doing is expanding the court system. So I want to know what each of you thinks about that and why you think, and Karen, I'm going to ask you first. Why do you think that the Democrats want to expand the number of judges on the Supreme Court? And they're talking about 15, expanding it to 15. Why do you think that is?
Well, I'm actually more comfortable with just having the 9 that we have. I think it's harder to get a consensus when there are more judges. I mean, and I can just picture, here, to compare, let's say, to a jury of 12, it's very hard to get a consensus there with 12. So I'm more comfortable with the 9. And as I said before, these are very highly intelligent attorneys, jurists. Most of the time, I think they're looking at the issue. They're not looking to see, is this, something that will please the conservatives or the liberals. They're looking at the issue and the time that we're in. And we're becoming much more progressive now, the world, that, it has to change a little bit. And that's how the court is going. The court is changing somewhat. But I'm comfortable with the 9. I personally would not look to expand it.
Okay. Judge Guarino, why do you think that they're pushing for an expansion? Is this something the populace want?
First, Justice Ginsburg was in favor of 9. Justice Ginsburg believed in the Electoral College. It's been working fine for the last 200 plus years. Let it be. It's a bold attempt to steal power, just as when FDR tried to do it in the 30s and did not succeed because the Supreme Court stood up to him. It's a tactic, a threat tactic. You may be aware that there was a New York law about people transporting their guns from New York City who had full concealed carry permits and were allowed to take the guns up to a hunting lodge, for example, or someplace upstate. They were in transit, and New York said, no, you can't do that. And then it went through the lower courts, and then it went to the courts of appeal, and then New York withdrew the law. And Ginsburg made sure it got to the United States Supreme Court, but she voted with the majority that said, well, it's not ripe anymore because New York withdrew the law. So there's a lot of game playing that goes on. If you have 15 judges in a Democratic Senate, you will never have anything other than activist judges. What you need are more judges like Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, who upset the Republicans no end because they weren't reliable conservative votes. They read, as Cara says, they read the facts. They thought about what they were doing. And they wrote the decisions that fit the facts and not necessarily what they might have thought as their personal opinions. That's the hallmark of a judge. You go where the facts take you, and sometimes you write a decision you hate personally, but it's where the facts take you instead. So packing the court and threatening to take away the filibuster, and Senator White House filing an amicus brief from Rhode Island in that gun case in New York were all threats in order to intimidate and bully the 9 justices on the Supreme Court. They're human beings. They can be bullied. Their families can be harmed. They can worry about whether or not they're safe in their lifestyles, with people banging on the courthouse steps, defacing the United States Supreme Court. The discussion has gotten way out of hand, and it has to calm down. But we're not going to see that in the next 45 days.
I think it's absolutely irresponsible. Some of the statements I've seen come out of the senator's mouth. You know, we're going to burn down the. Well, I don't know if somebody said. I don't know if it was a senator or somebody said we're going to burn down the. You know, we're going to burn the place down. You know,
it was a former staffer of CNN who had his own TV show for a while.
Wow.
It's just remarkable to me in a time when you know, listen, it's silly season, right? Every presidential election, it becomes silly season, and people, you know, lose their mind.
Right.
This year, the threat is being backed up by violent overthrow of the country.
Yeah.
The threats are being backed up by violent overthrow of the United States. People making threats at any cost, we'll do this. Really? Over abortion? Yeah. Abortion doesn't become illegal, even if Roe v. Wade is overturned. Now, whether or not my personal opinion is in favor or against abortion, that's my personal opinion. I'm going to share it with you. But I'm a New York Catholic, born and raised, and I have an opinion, but I'm not going to share it. Judges don't share those opinions, nor should they.
Right.
But that's not a reason to burn the country to the ground. It just sends it back to the states.
Joanne Cosby says 999 is a good number. Do not change.
Do not change.
But you seem to be in the majority, Joanne. But, you know, Judge Guarino, let's talk about that for a minute. For both of you, I didn't realize it when I invited you both on, but we're all Italian women, and we're all Catholic women. And we are hearing a Daily Mail actually put something in that because Amy Barrett, who is a nominee or a prospective nominee of President Trump, is a Catholic, that might be problematic to the senators. And I think that we've seen that before happen with the Senate, where they brought up someone's religion as a reason to, say that they shouldn't be seated on the bench. And the reason for anybody that doesn't know is exactly what Judge Guarino just brought up, is that for the Catholic religion, abortion is a sin, and they are pro-life. But Judge Guarino, go into that if you can a little bit, because I think it's important for a lot of women watching. And for those of you who don't know, and I wear everything on my sleeve, everybody knows everything about me. I'm a Republican, I'm a Catholic, I'm pro-choice. I am 1,000% anti second and third trimester abortion. I think that, obviously if there's a medical reason, that the doctor will do what they have to do. But what the bill that passed in Albany, to me, is infanticide. And I cannot even believe that we allowed that to happen in Albany right now. Right now, pets have more rights than children, than children. So that gets me crazy. It's another show. But as a pro-choice woman, explain to me why Roe v. Wade doesn't automatically get overturned if it's 5 conservatives and 4 liberals. Why can we feel confident that we're not going to lose our rights as women?
Let's talk about stare decisis, which is a legal term for those of us who learned the law many decades ago when they still use Latin. It means it is a settled item and you don't overturn it unless it's. But then Plessy versus Ferguson was a settled item, and that said that Black people were property and had to be overturned, of course, because it was an extension of slavery. To make a very long story short, poll after poll says that majority of Catholics are pro-choice. There are also somewhere north of 80 million cradle Catholics, and perhaps a third of them are practicing Catholics who regularly go to church. So there's always that issue. This year, if you're foolish enough to get all of your news and thought from social media, you will see the competing archdioceses and priests and lobbying groups trying to convince you if you're Catholic, you can't possibly vote for the Democrat Biden, and if you're Catholic, you can't possibly vote for Orange Man Bad Trump. So the divide is great. In 2016, President Trump received 52% of the Catholic vote. Now, I don't know if that's 52% of the practicing Catholic vote or 52% of the 80 million Catholics in our country who may or may not have they're just cultural Catholics, if you will. So it's an issue that's divided us for 50 years, since 1970. The problem with the issue is that, to my point of view, is that the National Abortion Rights League, the National Organization of Women, they reduce the argument to absurdity. Unless you agree that a child can be born and left to die, as good old Governor Ralph Northam said, we make the child comfortable and then we decide whether it lives or dies. I would venture to guess that except for the very far left progressive crowd, that is not the thought of, frankly, white, Catholic, suburban, college-educated women. They understand that women are generally pro-choice, like Senator Collins, Senator Murkowski, are moderate. And that means that if an abortion is necessary for whatever reason there may be between a woman and her doctor, most people understood that to mean not into the 3rd trimester. What has been sold to the American people over the last 50 years is that you're not pro-choice unless you agree, excuse the Italian-American hands, unless you agree that it goes all the way to the 9th month. I'm not a mother. I had secretaries, assistants standing next to me 9 months pregnant. You convinced me that's not a viable human being. You're not going to convince me that that's not a viable human being that's entitled to be born. However, we all understand the issues involved. It's that the conversation is reduced to absurdity. If you either all in or not at all. That's where the problem is. And if you wanted to be endorsed as a candidate, you had to say it was okay to do intact dilation and curettage of a 9-month baby. And that's where we've lost our moral compass in terms of the issue of abortion. End of sermon.
My mom wants you to know that she thinks that both of you are amazing. So.
Thank you.
And it's hard to impress my mom. So she only speaks the truth. Cara, to tell me, and because you work in elder law and maybe this applies, what in the fact that we have HIPAA laws and what in the fact that we have privacy laws with our health care, wouldn't women receive protection to some extent, not only with Roe v. Wade, but with that as well, into the future? I mean, it's an argument being made there that our rights are already protected?
I don't think our rights would be fully protected. I don't want to see Roe v. Wade overturned. I am a Catholic, but I'm pro-choice. I don't allow the church or anyone to dictate, the choice that a woman has to make. I think it should be that person's choice.
Right.
But that being said, I think it would be a violation against women. I think we've already discussed. We already have Roe v. Wade. It was argued out. I don't see why we should go back to trying to overturn what I think was a well thought out decision. I think we should move on.
I agree, and I think, for me, I think that if anybody tried to overturn Roe v. Wade, the fury that would be unleashed into the world would be amazing. And I've always been someone, I'm pro-choice, not pro-abortion. And I think most people are that. Pro-choice, not pro-abortion. And I think that there are ways that, we can satisfy this issue with not spending, public dollars on abortion, or at least public education processes. I mean, look, we have gay couples who are seeking to adopt children. We have single couples who are seeking,
right,
people who are seeking to adopt. We have such a desire to parent in America, but we have the toughest adoption laws anywhere. What if we start talking about making adoption easier? What if we start, taking a look, and Judge Guarino, you of all people can speak on this, and having sat on the bench of family court, how many young children are living in foster care that could have been adopted or should have been adopted, and because we don't think about that as a society, if we put as much energy into that as we do into abortion, I mean, think of how much better the children would be.
What I've been saying to you, Leticia, is that the conversation has been skewed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As of 2017, 2018, 40% of all abortions are a morning after pill.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know how rare a 12 or 13 or 14 or 15-year-old is having an abortion? How rare it is for people to have abortions in the 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th month. The narrative, remember, we have facts that no one hears, and then we have a narrative. And the narrative makes you believe that people are being sent out with the hangers, as they were in 1960. Not the case. With 39, 40% of all terminations, to use the right word, are morning after pill. So as the science in 50 years has gotten able to do heart surgery on 20-week babies, the abortion issue has become less and less viable.
Yeah.
It will eventually meet where 75% of terminations are a morning after pill, and people do what they need to do if they wish to within the first 12 or 16 or 18 weeks. It's going to resolve itself by science and by practice. And Roe v. Wade will at some point become obsolete. But people are ginned up by narratives. Could we talk about possible candidates in the last couple minutes?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Could we talk about the possible female candidates in the last
couple minutes? And then when we're ready to sew up, Judge Guarino, I want you to talk about the, Ginsburg dying on Rosh Hashanah. Right? So we'll leave that till the last minute. But let's talk about the female candidates that are out there.
Cara,
I'm not sure.
Okay, so the names that are out there are 11th. Now, again, I'm going to say, Lena Kagan was never a judge, but they loved her because she allowed ROTC to go back to Harvard. This crop is not all Ivy League and not all cookie cutter. Usually it's a club at the Supreme Court. They're Ivy League, Stanford, Yale, Columbia, Harvard. This group is not a club. The 11th Circuit judge, Barbara Lagoa is Cuban. She's 52. She's had lots of years at the Florida court. I am just doing it as an analysis for us political types. I'll put on my political hat now. She's got to be number one on the list, in my view, because Florida is an important state. She's Cuban. She's conservative. She's Ivy League. She fits in with the club. Number two, Seventh Circuit, the lady you mentioned, Amy Coney Barrett, with 7 kids, who Dianne Feinstein attacked as being an Orthodox Catholic. There's no such thing, of course, when she was up for her circuit court seat. She is 48 years old, young. She's in the 7th Circuit. Allison Rushing is 38 years old, the single youngest judge appointed at the time of her appointment to the 4th Circuit. There were 2 men who were in there. Hardiman, who was in the final few on the president's lists when he appointed Gorsuch. And then there's an Indian American, Amul Tapar, who's at the 6th Circuit. So far the president is saying he's going to wait till after Justice Ginsburg's buried, but he is most likely going to nominate a woman. We did some research today, my friend who's the descendant of John Marshall and I, and found that there is a conservative African-American woman. Her name is Stephanie Davis, and she was appointed by President Trump in 2019 as a federal district court judge to the Eastern District of Michigan. Now that's my pick. I'd be very thrilled to see the president nominate a Black female from Michigan. So that's the political view of the people who are on the short list. There are 2 other female judges also on the short list who are at the Court of Appeals level.
So for our audience, and does anybody want to weigh in with their pick, or anybody that's a favorite? I mean, I would obviously the president will nominate, and the Senate. Mitch McConnell has said that they will hold the hearings, and I want to ask either of you if you believe that Joe Biden gains anything by not releasing who he would pick. I mean, why do you think he's staying silent on this? Cara, do you have any clue why he would?
Well, I did read something that the Democrats raised $100 million in donations since her death. So I don't think there's anything more to gain. I think Biden's already received that amount in additional donations. Why throw a monkey wrench into that?
So he's skating the line. He's like, okay, I'm doing good. I'm not going to rock the boat. If I name somebody and they're too liberal or too conservative, I might lose a portion of my base. So I'll just stay my line.
Yes.
Just toe the line and say, don't appoint. Let me appoint. That's interesting. Camille Zarrilli just joined us. Wonderful dialogue, as expected, open, honest, and necessary. And ladies, Camille Zarrilli is a dear friend and very, very strong woman from Staten Island. She runs a business, a beautiful flower business. So if anybody needs flowers, you should see Camille Zarrilli at Floral Sentiment. Judge Guarino, what do you think about Biden not naming his pick?
I think the whole campaign is about anti-Trump. It's not about pro-Biden. So there's nothing to be gained by him putting out the names. He can only harm himself if the people he's going after to defeat the president are white, college-educated, suburban women, and cultural Catholics. He gains nothing by giving out the names of the people he would nominate. It's easier to take pot shots at the person that the president nominates.
Okay, so it's been, the hour just flew by, and it has been a joy having the 2 of you with us today. And I hope everybody in the audience got something out of this, because, as we said, Supreme Court is something we all hear about when there's a big case, but we don't think about it regularly. But to me, it's one of the most important jobs that the president has, is to appoint to the Supreme Court because it lives on for a lifetime of that justice, and there are 9 there. Annette, I would like you, Judge Guarino, to end or set this all up by sharing with us some of the commentary that you have about the fact that the notorious RGB was, oh, did I do that wrong?
RBG.
The notorious RBG left us on Rosh Hashanah, which is a Jewish New Year.
One of my friends, Linda Markowitz, posted a remembrance by a lady named Molly Conway, and it is said that a person who dies on Rosh Hashanah, which is when the justice died, is a tzedek, a good and righteous person. In tradition, it's translated as charity, but a tzedekah takes many forms. It's not so much a benevolent contribution, it's a balancing of scales, an act of working toward justice. Correcting injustice, balancing the scales, evaluating the distribution of power, and creating equity is tzedakah, the work of righteousness. So there you have Justice Ginsburg. Not that she's a nice person, but that she was working tirelessly to create a more just world. Can I do one quote?
Sure.
Fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Rest in peace, Justice Ginsburg.
Yes. Rest in peace. She was a wonderful woman. I admired her greatly.
As did I. I think that every American, and honestly, everyone around the world, wishes the family just so much support in this difficult time. But she lived a full life, and we want to thank the family for sharing her with us. And who would have ever thought that tiny, petite woman would pack such an enormous wallop? I personally, even though we didn't agree on politics, I admired her still, and I thank her for being way for me and for others. And ladies, I thank you both for all that you have done to pave the way for others, but more importantly, to keep showing the world that women are tough, and women are smart, and women can get this any man. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you'll come back again in the future when we have another legal about. The dog is barking, the construction starts, we're going to sign out. Ladies and gentlemen, for this hour. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.